Hello and welcome back to the Villa Filler podcast. I'm here once again with my good friend Dan Wiseman. How you doing, Dan?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
I'm okay. It's the morning after the day before last night. Obviously, Aston Villa won, Everton won at Goodison Park, and for once, Dan, I think we can actually, uh, empathise with the Blues because for 8 minutes we were in dreamland.
That's a very good way of putting it. Yeah, man. It was the first time I went down to the pub for the first time since the restart to watch the game. It was a big one. I was getting sort of playoff final style nerves. For every fixture, sort of obviously starting with the Palace game, there's a real sort of do or die sort of feel about it, and we just can't afford to lose a game again really this season. And so the nerves were starting, and yeah, went down to the pub to watch it, and given what transpired, it was quite nice to be in the boozer so that I could drink my sorrows away pretty much immediately after the final whistle. So yeah, feeling a little bit worse for wear this morning, but now good to see you again, my man.
Absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure. And, Villa, for the first half, I feel like it was fairly even. I don't really think there was anyone who you could say won the first half. Both teams really aiming to go long, which I found
Yeah.
kind of weird, I guess, more from a Villa standpoint because nothing seemed to hold up for Samatta. But for Everton, I guess it makes sense. You want to bypass that midfield, the creativity. We all know how good Douglas Luiz has been, and obviously we've conceded the most amount of goals in the Premier League, so you're naturally going to want to put the pressure on. And for the most part in the first half, it was a pretty well drilled defensive performance from Everton. Very very typical of an Ancelotti team. But it felt good to go into half time at 0-0. I did feel like we had one or two chances, and then obviously Mason Holgate came off injured as well, which led to Branthwaite coming on, which you'd look at that and think that's a weakness that you need to try and exploit, which Villa didn't unfortunately do in the first half. But I was quite encouraged by the first half time. I don't know about you.
Yeah, look, it was one of those where I think both sides, Everton are a bit of a sticky run of form at the moment. They're sort of been a side that all season has been sort of played by inconsistency, and they came off a really tough result at Wolves, which a lot of Everton fans were calling their worst result of the season in terms of a performance. Even that's not just under Ancelotti, but Marco Silva as well. So there was a real onus on them to come out and improve and impress. I think both sides were a little bit tentative in the first half. I don't think either side was really going all out. I think Villa, obviously, as I was just saying, very conscious of the fact that they can't really afford to lose another game this season. And yeah, I think that was the sort of tale of the tape in terms of how the first 45 went. I thought, yeah, there was a couple of chances sort of opening up for both sides. Both sides trying their luck from range a lot of the time. But yeah, I sort of went into half time pretty satisfied. And, as has been the case with a lot of games since the restart, not just with Villa, but in the Premier League, the first half is very telling. And it usually takes until the second 45 for games to open up and you see a better reflection of the game.
And obviously Conor Hourihane again started, and obviously everyone knows my feelings about Conor Hourihane on the podcast, but he contributed again with another assist from a free kick that Ezri Konsa side-footed in by the looks of it. I think if it wasn't for that, Keenan Van Nistelrooy was coming in with a bullet diving header. But it was good to see, players doing their jobs. And we spoke on the podcast before about the amount of set plays that Villa get in games. When you've got a player like Jack Grealish and even John McGinn who are often so fouled, you really have to take advantage of these set plays. And Villa could have 15 free kicks in a game when most teams would only have 7, but other teams would probably still score 2 goals from them set plays. So it is vitally important that especially with someone like Conor Hourihane, you take advantage of that. And it was great to see a defender actually score from a set play as well.
Yeah, it's one of those where again, we had a lot of chances from set pieces yesterday. I was pretty dissatisfied overall with the standard of deliveries by Jack and Conor. I didn't think too many of the crosses were great, but they got that one right. Conor Hourihane has now assisted our last 4 Premier League goals. And that warrants him a spot in the starting 11 for me. for the last two games of the season. You know, since his league debut for Villa back in 2017, no player has more assists for Villa than Conor Hourihane. He's racked at 21 in those years. And you know, considering he's playing inside where Jack is supposed to be our main creator, that really tells you all you need to know. And look, I understand that he's pretty flawed as a sort of two-way player. I don't think he's as reliable defensively as he is going forward. But I think he got a bit of a hard rap in the Championship because we were playing in sort of the base of the midfield, and I think we started to see now in the Premier League that was really never really his position. I think his sort of defensive weaknesses were exploited in that sense. But no, he's worth having on the pitch because, as I said, overall, I do think his deliveries weren't particularly great yesterday. But there's always that chance he gets one right, and that's what happened yesterday. And it's a good finish from Ezri actually. Gets a nice clean connection on it. And yeah, it was a big moment. And I did feel at that stage of the game, mate, that we were going to be able to see that one out. But just, yeah, as I have to talk about, wasn't quite to be.
It wasn't, and I think, as you kind of touched on, the fact that Hourihane has assisted all of our goals since the restart, it's quite telling, really, because he's a man who struggled to get in the team for parts in the season, and if I'm being honest, I think when he has earned his spot in the team, you know, I think he has somewhat failed to deliver at times. You know, you've just got to look back at the Newcastle game where he gets a goal and an assist. And then the next game, I can't remember who it is for the life of me now. I think it may have been Manchester United. No, it wouldn't have been Manchester United because he played quite well in that game. But you know, whenever Conor Hourihane has actually contributed as a substitute, he generally hasn't performed in the next full game that he started, which is somewhat frustrating. But I think the goal for Ezri as well does a player like him the world of confidence because he's been playing out of position. He's been getting, you know, plenty of flack from Villa fans. So, you know, it's good for him to get his first Premier League goal. And, you know, I think when you're in a kind of relegation battle, you need your players to stand up and be counted for. And, you know, when you feel like the whole world is going against you, especially as a younger player like Ezri, it's really good to see, you know, that he can step up when it counts. Unfortunately for Villa, though, we couldn't see the game out, Dan.
Nah, it's a shame, and yeah, as you were saying, just before we dig on to it's important that those players like Ezri do step up and contribute because we really don't have many goal threats in this team, and that was, you know, we were sort of getting into some pretty good spots in the second half, but it was only really Douglas, Jack, that looked like scoring, to be honest with you. You know, I want to talk about the performance of the front three as a whole in a little while, but yeah, it's annoying that, you know, it came up on Sky that no side had conceded more goals in the last 15 minutes of the game than Villa this season. At the time, it was 16 when that little stat came up in the corner. Now 7. And as soon as that stat came up, mate, I knew what was going to happen. Then the ball comes in. Again, it's another instance where the defence is too compact, with too squashed up inside the penalty area, and it leaves space for those wide players to drift in. Matt Targett's too central. And when Walcott, it meets Theo Walcott's head, it just felt like an age, didn't it? It was sort of in the air, and it was looping, and you can see it was coming down. It was over Pepe. And yeah, poor Ezri. I've seen a few people blaming him, you know, sort of, well, not blaming him, but saying he should have done more and he should have cleared that ball off the line. Look, that's very tough. But, you know, there's far more players at fault for that goal than Ezri Konsa. He does his best and he almost keeps that out. It's very unfortunate. I was hoping, there's an instance I remember well. It was Chesney at home to Bolton in the Championship. We were kind of hoping for some goal line heroics like that, to be honest with you. But no, I can't blame Ezri for that one, mate. Theo Walcott comes on and does it again off the bench. No player has. He's now up to 4th in all-time substitute goals now. Theo Walcott.
That's crazy.
And so, yeah, he's a player that you know, he comes on and has an impact, and he's a great player to have in the squad. And look, it's a little bit disappointing that he's done it with a header. I don't know how many chances he's put away with his head in his time, but no, it was almost inevitable, mate. And I think that's what's disappointing.
Yeah, and as you say, it felt like an age. And if watching it, first of all, you've got to close down the cross in the box, so that's on Elmo. And whilst I think we've all called for Elmo to come in at right back, I think yesterday's reminded us that his legs aren't what he thinks they are, because he gets himself in these advanced positions. Villa lose possession, and then he can't. There's nothing he can do. He's not quick enough. All he can do is foul the player and stop the play, which he did with Gordon, and picked up his first bucket of the season. But as well, that ball coming in, Matt Targett's got to do better for me. Again, it's something you're going to have heard on the podcast 1,000 times. Disappointed in Matt Targett's defensive play, and as well, to be honest, if I'm looking at Rayner's got so much time. He's watching that ball come over, and whilst he can see that Ezri Konsa is there and hoping to kick it off the line, for someone as experienced as Rayner, I'd have hoped he'd have just gone through Konsa to keep the ball off the line himself. Take no chances. You'd know as a goalkeeper, Dan, you cannot lay any more trust in anyone else. It is your duty to keep keep the ball out of the back of the net. So, if I'm being hypercritical, I would have liked to have seen Rayner, at least go for it. And first of all, his positioning for the cross was absolutely atrocious, and I guess he kind of felt like he had to come out because obviously Matt Targett hadn't closed down Walcott. But there was so many things wrong with that goal, Dan. But we wouldn't have to have worried about it as much if Villa would have put the ball away in the other end no more than 5 minutes earlier, Dan.
Yeah, Anwar, there's me and you have made a point on the podcast, and I'm surprised that we haven't really been ripped apart for it yet in the sort of Anwar El Ghazi, Cristiano Ronaldo comparisons, there's no comparison between the two players, don't get me wrong, but Anwar clearly has picked like posters of Ronaldo up in his bedroom, doesn't he? The way that he plays, the way that he shoots, the kind of knuckleball technique, he's done in the mercurials. It's there for everyone to see. I think it's actually something that he's spoken about in the past in his Ajax days, how he grew up idolising Cristiano. And the difference between the two players is that Anwar he's scared of being hurt by Jordan Pickford, is how I interpret this. The difference between the two players is you don't need to side foot that in, just fall on the ball. I think if it makes contact with any other part of your body, that goes in the back of the net, and it's essentially a goal line clearance, man. How he's put it over the bar, and that's the difference between these players. Ronaldo, takes Jordan Pickford into the net with him in that scenario, and it's disappointing because I do think that's what has sort of caused Anwar to miss that chance there. But it's another thing where as soon as we missed that chance, you knew something was in the offing. But again, he should really do more there. It was disappointing too, but it's not. It's easy to say now when we've drawn 1-1 that it's Anwar El Ghazi's fault that we've lost that game, and I've seen loads of people say that that's going to be the sort of infamous image of this season is that snapshot of Anwar putting that one over the bar. But if we can defend from winning positions, Anwar doesn't need. We can win 1-0 and we win that game. Yes, he should score it, but that's not what's going to send us down this season. It's we've scored 39 goals in the league this season, which is one less than Burnley, who are intense. It's more than Sheffield United, more than Newcastle, more than Brighton. It's actually 9 more than Crystal Palace has scored this season, who are far better than we are. So it's not goals that are I've seen a lot of people, and I've said that the forward line is something that we will talk about, but I've seen a lot of people saying that our strikers are at fault for this season, saying we've only got 5 goals off Wes, 2 off Samagol, none from Keenan, none from... I've even seen people saying that Vasilev has 0 in 4, and I think, Vasilev has 0 in 4 games. Yes, but 0 in about 4 minutes. It's not goals that are going to be the reason we go down this season, because as I said, mate, there are plenty of teams that we've scored more than, but there's only one team in the league that's conceded more than we have, and it's the team beneath us in the league in Norwich, who are already relegated.
Yeah, and on the El Ghazi chance, I've watched it too many times, and it kept me up last night. and I don't know. As you say, anything but what he does, and the ball goes in the net. And as well, he's not even facing the goal, which is the most frustrating thing about it. And one thing I did want to touch on is, I'm sure you and other Villa fans would have seen his interview that he did. How he was saying how his dad's always sending the scores, and he's keeping a lookout, and he's ready to fight and stuff. We didn't see that. If you were ready to fight, you would have gone through Jordan Pickford, scored the goal, taken the injury, and Villa possibly would be in a better place for it. Talk's cheap at this stage of the season. 3 points of what is king, and at the end of the day, we didn't get that. But as you say, Dan, we've now conceded 66 goals. That and to only score, a 2/3 of how many you've conceded. The writing's on the wall. You can't concede that many. We've conceded the most in the league. It's no surprise with a stat like that we're not bottom of the league, to be honest, Dan. And I think, if anything, the fact that we've outscored the likes of Palace, Norwich, Newcastle, Burnley, teams like that, I think it's more telling of how poor the Premier League has really been this season. Especially for Liverpool to have won it in the way that they have, and for City to have been so far behind, and even look at Leicester, how they've bottled it. This Premier League season will constantly be remembered as just one of the worst seasons of all time. Not only because Liverpool have won the league, but just it's been so poor in quality.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, mate. But it's been coming. Like, people seem quite surprised by a seeming sudden decline in the Premier League, but it's been coming for a long time. People forget that last season Huddersfield were relegated on 16 points. Last season Fulham conceded 82 goals in the league. It's been coming for a long time. Whilst the standard of the top six is very good, and you'll struggle to find those sort of big sides that across Europe that have all consistently been battling. But look, it's been coming for a long time, and the Premier League has been pretty substandard this season. I think the standard of manager across the league is pretty exceptional. The fact that we're seeing Carlo Ancelotti on the touchline for Everton, and they're 14th, 13th, something like that, is nuts. But yeah, the league hasn't been a great season this season, and I think the fact that Villa are still with a fighting chance of survival at this stage of the season, considering how poor we've been, tells you all you need to know. And look, I think defensively, we've spoken so much on the podcast about how poor we've been, and yesterday was another demonstration of that. There was a sort of instance in the first minute where Calvert-Lewin has that bicycle kick. It was literally like 50 seconds in or something like that. And whilst he sails it straight over the bar, the defence is too deep. It's on the 6-yard box, and that was, for me, quite telling early on that the defence were too deep. They were scared. We needed to be higher up. We needed to be more positive defensively. And those crosses. Everton are a very crossing side. Their Richarlison benefits this season a lot from crosses. Each fullback in Gibril Sidibe, who wasn't playing yesterday, and in Luca Digne have assisted Richarlison 3 times each, and that's where they get a lot of their goals from. But with Villa, we go forward and we're too slow. Whilst I thought yesterday there was a bit more cohesion, we're still too slow in getting forward, and we don't process the ball and get higher up the pitch fast enough. We've scored 1 goal on the counter-attack this season. 1.
That's crazy.
Bournemouth have more than that. Watford have 3 times as many as that. And that tells you all you know. There's not enough pace in the front line. There's not enough energy when we get the ball to get forward. In the last few minutes of the game, we saw, Pepe really running to the edge of his box, trying to get counter-attack started, trying to find Douglas with a quick throw. But we shouldn't be needing to wait until it's 1-1. We're like, shit, we've got to try and win this game in the 87th minute for those things to start happening, mate.
Yeah, and to be honest, Dan, that's been the story of the whole season, really, hasn't it? And it's frustrating. But I think, you know, the main takeaway is one, that we didn't lose, and two, that we're still within a fighting chance of staying up. It will take 2 wins, and that still might not even guarantee it. But all you can do at this point is win your games, and that's what's important for Villa. You know, that there's still a chance. And, you know, whilst looking at the post-match interviews with Smith and looking how clearly deflated he is, it's his job to pick himself back up, and tell the lads, look, you were better than this lot for the majority of the game. And
Yep.
you know, we've got Arsenal next. Arsenal, we were better than for, again, the majority of the game when we played them last. And whilst they've just gone and beaten the champions Liverpool, you know, there's going to be chances in this game where Villa can win it. We know how poor Arsenal can be. We know Arteta hasn't got the foundations of a team that he wants. You know, he's been working with Manchester City for the past 3 years, and he doesn't want to have David Luiz and Shogdan Mustafi at the back, in a back three. So there's so many encouraging signs for Villa still, and even though it's late on, I'm trying to keep optimistic, Dan. And yesterday I tweeted out asking for some thoughts from Rob Warner yet again. Fullbacks tucked too narrow, yet we get done at the back post. I'm not even good at FIFA, and I can see it. I think we've touched on that, haven't we? It's poor, and you know, again, I think, you know, if I asked you for your thoughts on this, Dan, I know exactly what you're going to say, and it would involve a certain Mr. John Terry, wouldn't it?
Yeah, mate, it's disappointing, but look, as you say, it's the defence has been long documented this season, but you know, somehow, despite that sloppy defence, we're still here. We're still in with this chance, and it's quite unbelievable. But you know, yes, Arsenal just beat Liverpool. It was mainly to Liverpool's detriment than it was to Arsenal being positive. You know, they made 2 stopping mistakes from the almost impeccable Van Dijk and Alisson, and it was weird to see those players make those mistakes. I don't know if you were watching the game, mate, but
yeah,
just you like it. You sort of there's a fragility about that Liverpool side, and Arsenal did well to profit off that, but they weren't particularly. Arsenal were a lot better, but you know, the goals that they scored weren't because of their own creations, because Liverpool let them into those sort of positions themselves. But Arsenal are a very 1 step forward, 2 steps back kind of team, and we've seen that a lot of times this season. They show optimism and they show some positivity, and then the next game you can get a complete different side. And so, look, I don't see this as a definite loss. Far from it. I think, you know, there's a few scenarios going around where you know, I'm just going to read this one out on Twitter that I found of at Gary Smith. So Watford lose to West Ham and Man City. Bournemouth lose to Southampton. We get a draw with Arsenal. All pretty realistic. Then on the last day, if we can beat West Ham, Watford lose to Arsenal, we stay up. And that's not too unrealistic a scenario. Results need to go our way, and you know, we're going to have to hope that Bournemouth and Watford do us a favour. Most likely, you know, we will be playing Championship football this season, but there's still a hope. And as I said to you on the last podcast, mate, we just need to give ourselves that chance of going into the final day against West Ham with it all on the line, because I think, you know, when you've got a fixture like that, given how both teams are sort of teetering around, well, not so much West Ham, but around the relegation zone, that kind of do or die match is really what we deserve, to be honest with you.
It is, and you know, I think we'll see exactly what Villa are made of. I'm seeing, you know, tweets from people saying, you know, with Arsenal being Jack Grealish's potential last home game for Villa, that, you know, hopefully that will be something that can spur Villa on. And you know, I think that, you know, everyone in that dressing room should know what it means. And I saw a tweet of a journalist who was at the game who said Grealish is playing like a man who's already secured his move, and you know, that kind of frustrated me. But you know, when the players in the dressing room will know, whatever the outcome is, if they want, you know, this team to stay together and stay in the league, then you know, it's important that they get 3 points against Arsenal and 3 points against West Ham. And I think while we're remaining optimistic, Dan, I think that's a good place for us to end the podcast. So on a more positive tone, West Ham obviously play Watford tonight in what is a huge game for us. But again, we've got to win our games, Dan. It's out of our hands. We've got to, Bournemouth have been playing well. West Ham, if they win, they're clear from safety. I think even if Watford win, they're probably clear from safety as well. It's going to be a really hard one to call, but it's an absolutely huge game for the bottom four. As always, Dan, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you on the podcast. You more than likely will have just heard us. You won't have seen us. I promise for the next game, I will have my laptop and you will be able to see Dan and I. And see that we've actually had haircuts. We promise we've had haircuts. We've had them for the past week and a half now. We're probably going to need another haircut by the time you actually see us, because it's taking so long. But Dan, as always, it's been a pleasure. Any final words from yourself, mate?
No, as you said, mate, it could be the last time we see Premier League football at Villa Park on Tuesday, and it's nice that it's a side like Arsenal coming in. Just make the most of it, enjoy it. It's far from doom and gloom just yet. There is still an ounce of positivity in me I do still believe, actually. So hopefully everyone listening does too. And hopefully we speak again on Tuesday night, mate, with that positivity still intact.
Hopefully, mate. The Great Escape is still on. If you guys enjoyed the podcast, hit the like button, comment your thoughts below. We're always interested to see what you guys have to say. And subscribe for more content if you're listening on Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, whatever your preferred podcast app is. Subscribe, like, do whatever you can on there. It really helps us out. Thank you guys very much, and up the Villa.